Hi! Today, we're sharing another recipe. It's pecan pie today.
Yippee!
Now she just said these words. This one's actually pretty simple.
It really is.
She just said that out loud.
Simple. Yeah.
So apparently making pecan pie is not difficult or complicated. She is going to talk to you guys about making pecan pie and also Dixie pie. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yep.
So a Dixie pie is not a pecan pie. You can say pecan pie. I'm gonna say pecan pie.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna be in this video. I'm gonna be holding the camera because we're hearing a recipe from a master baker.
Oh, thanks.
A master home baker.
Yes, I'm a home baker.
Yeah. Did you learn this recipe from your dad?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so this is a hand-me-down family recipe. You guys are gonna get to know all of the secrets for this very simple, very easy pecan pie recipe. So here you go.
Mise en place. Okay, if I said that correctly, that's the stuff you need to get ready. And I've got my stuff out here on the counter. I need eggs, I need sugar, corn syrup. My melted butter is over there on the stove. I want to kind of keep it warm so it doesn't solidify on me.
It's in the coffee mug, if you're wondering.
Yeah, it's just easier to melt that way. And then I have vanilla, and I add a little bit of maple extract.
And salt. And pecans.
And pecans. Thank you. This is actually the recipe my dad always used, but it's the USDA pecan pie recipe. So if you just Google USDA pecan pie recipe, that's what you're going to get, except we always put the maple flavoring in it. Not maple syrup, but we put the maple extract in it, and that's what we did different.
Have you ever tried replacing this with maple syrup? Have you ever tried that?
No, we haven't, and I know some people use some maple syrup, and I know some people use the dark corn syrup, but my dad thought that just made it too heavy. He just thought that made it too dark. And he wanted it a little bit more rich, which you get from that added maple syrup, but he didn't want it
maple extract.
Yeah, maple extract. But he just didn't want it so heavy maple that you couldn't eat it.
Okay.
Pecan pie is pretty sweet anyway. Well, this base that we're going to make with the vanilla, and if you want to add the maple extract or not, that base recipe is the recipe that we always use for Dixie pie. Now, some people put walnuts. We always used the English walnuts. We didn't use the black walnuts. And then we would put some chocolate chips in it. And then just before we poured the base on top of the walnuts and the chocolate chips, we would put just a little bit of whiskey in it. And so you don't want a really great whiskey that has no flavor and is extremely smooth, because then there's no bite and you can't even tell it's there. So you want one, that
like Maker's Mark,
that's going to taste like a bourbon or taste like a whiskey, because that's the flavor you want to leave behind. And that's how we made it. I don't know if that's
because the alcohol cooks out, but the flavor is left behind. And if the alcohol is so smooth, it won't leave much flavor behind, and then you're wasting good whiskey.
Correct.
So you can use something like Maker's that is a little bit sharp.
More, yeah, a little bit more oomph to it, and then when you take it, you're like, oh yeah, you can taste that. But you don't want so much whiskey in it that it won't bake, that it won't cook correctly.
Won't set, yeah.
So because you want the pie to
do you do a couple tablespoons in a single pie? Or
I do 1 tablespoon in a single pie. And
1
that's
tablespoon.
You've got to have a bourbon or a whiskey that's got
some flavor,
some bite to it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then just a comment, I'm sure we're going to get some remarks about bourbons and whiskeys. And all bourbons are whiskeys, but not all whiskeys are bourbons.
Right.
So if you think of it as breakfast cereal, okay, all of your Fruit Loops type cereals are all cereals, but not all cereals are Fruit Loops.
There you go.
What I like to do is I like to put it in a certain order. And so we're going to make one small batch.
Do you always start with eggs when you make
always start with the eggs.
A pie? Because this is sort of like a custard pie, right?
It really is.
So you always start with eggs.
Yep.
Because you want to make sure that those yolks get broken up.
Right. And then I like to put the granulated sugar in the pie next. And this is another chemistry lesson about your different kinds of glucose and sucrose and fructose.
Sugar.
different sugars that you put in there, and that's why you need 2 different types of sugars because they flavor it different ways. And then I have my handy boat motor.
Immersion blender.
And you're probably thinking, wow, that's a great big bowl for that, but we don't usually just make a small batch. We usually make enough. Our oven, we can actually put 9 pies in at a time.
And we'll bake 9 pies at a time. I will insert a couple of pictures here so you can see how many pies we generally make for a season. But that was 1 cup of sugar, Mom?
That's 1 cup. And the reason I like to put my sugar in with my eggs is I want that granulated sugar to be mixed with the eggs so it'll give it a chance to dissolve. Because you can feel it and you can hear it's still granulated in there.
It's really gritty.
And you don't want it to be gritty, you want it to be smooth. So I like to, you know, let it set for a moment or 2.
So that's 4 eggs, 1 cup of sugar.
And then I'm going to need 1.5 cups of light corn syrup.
Which is 12 ounces.
So what I've always liked about Pyrex is even since I was a kid, it had cups, ounces, and pints listed on it on one side, and then it has metric on the other side. So if you've got a recipe that calls for 1 volume or another volume, but I always like that about Pyrex. So if you're just thinking, oh my gosh, I need a 1.5 cups, but this is actually measured in ounces, what do I need? It's pretty simple to just, you know, look on here and say, well, 1.5 cup is 12 ounces. This is 16 ounces, so we need 12 out of the 16 of this.
Can we talk for a second about liquid versus solid or dry ingredient measuring cups?
Yes.
Why does it make a difference? Does it make a difference to
Yes.
measure liquids in
It does make
the
a difference.
wet, the liquid, instead of the dry? Because we have a dry measuring cup, and you could just do a measuring cup and a half, right?
Yeah.
Wrong?
Well, you can, but it's more precise in the liquid measuring cup than it is in the solid measuring cup, because some liquids are going to adhere to the sides, and the viscosity, it will actually bow into, and you may not get it flush and level. And some with the viscosity, it will actually come up over the top, and you still won't quite be level. But with, you know, with solid, it's easy to, you know, use your,
Okay.
yeah.
So when you measure your corn syrup, you use the liquid
Yes.
measuring cup.
And technically, the bottom of, you know, when you see it up, adhere to the side and go down to the bottom and go back up, that bottom should be here in the middle, not on the edge. Because sometimes those liquids will kind of all bow down a little bit in the middle, and then they will adhere at the top, and you want to measure from that middle where it's at the lowest point.
Okay. Of course, you could do this by hand, right?
Yes.
If you don't have an immersion blender.
And if you are just making 1 or 2 pies, it is certainly not worth buying an immersion blender. Now, we use our immersion blender very often, and so it's worth it for us to have an immersion blender.
We actually have 2. I didn't realize we had this one until she pulled it out. This is not the one she used for the pumpkin pie. I have a question about a hand mixer. Could you use a hand mixer, like one of those ones with the
absolutely.
2
We did-
little whisks?
Yeah, and that's what we used when I was a kid, because that's all we had.
Because you didn't have the stick blender. Okay. So any kind of blender mixing device. So if you've got like a pitcher blender, would that work too?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So any sort of mixing device would work for this.
Yeah, you can use a whisk.
Yeah, so you could do it by hand.
Yeah. Now, the only reason I'm not measuring this is because I have done this many times, and I know
You have?
this.
I'm kidding.
I have measured out of this flask many times, and so I know where that level
Well, and
needs
you're
to be.
also a chemist, and I feel like you probably know this by weight.
Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, but I've done it a lot of times, so I have measured it out of there and then put it back so I could learn where on that corn syrup flask it's going to be.
Because it does, when you pour it out, it's like glued to the inside of this. So when you let it sit for a while and everything drips all the way down to the bottom, it will actually be precise.
And it's losing all of that grittiness.
Every time you mix it, it gets smoother.
I need 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, which is not much, but you have to have some salt in your
Custard pie.
yeah, in everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's just sweet and it doesn't have any other flavors.
There's no balance. And she is using a recipe. I want to point this out. It's just scribbles. There are very few details on there, and yes, it's upside down. I will put in the recipe card. You've probably already seen that, but she, even the expert, needs notes.
Yeah.
Next is vanilla. How much?
1.5
teaspoons.
Yep. And all I have here in my hand is a half.
So you're going to do 3 halves.
Yeah, and a couple of extra drops, it looks like.
Well, can you have too much vanilla? I mean, you
think
can.
It's possible.
You can do a couple of like drops extra, and it's not going to hurt anything. Next is maple extract.
And the maple's a little bit thicker.
Yeah, it's a different kind of viscosity. And it's much darker. Just 1/2 teaspoon of that. And is that optional if you don't?
That is totally optional. The USDA recipe does not call for that.
So if you don't have maple extract, it's not gonna like break your pie.
No.
You're not doing it wrong. You're just not making it the way we make it.
Correct. Now all I need is the melted butter. Now your butter shouldn't be hot because you don't want to cook your eggs, but I like it liquid, but only, you know, you want it to be...
You want to be able to touch it with your hands.
Yeah, without burning yourself. And
if it is hot, can you use it?
Yeah, you can, but
you just have to be really careful.
And of course, you know, if you're pouring a thin stream high enough, it's going to cool on the way down.
True.
And that's it.
See, it is easy.
That's how easy it is.
And it smells so good.
Then you just take your pie dough,
which you've rolled out.
I rolled out a whole bunch of them yesterday. And I already have them in my pans, and some of these pans have been used so many times.
Now, you like to make really really shallow pecan pies.
Because pecan pie is extremely rich, and a lot of people will tell you, I can't eat a whole piece of pie, it's too sweet, it's too rich. And so when I roll them out, and they are not perfect, these are, what do you call it, artisanal?
Yeah.
Rustic. So I roll them out, and then I trim the edges, and it does shrink back a little bit. Then I put my wax paper in there just to keep it from sticking to anything else. I've used parchment before, but I actually prefer wax paper for this step because I'm not baking with it. I'm not cooking with it.
Right.
I just want to keep it off of being stuck from the other pie. You could use plastic wrap, but then they fit into each other so tightly, sometimes they'll be frozen together. And if I just use the wax paper...
And you leave a little gap of air.
And so they will nest, but not tightly.
Sandwich, right.
And if you watched our pie dough video, you know when I make the pie dough, I like to wrap it in wax paper. So I'm actually recycling this wax paper because all this had on it was pie dough.
So you take the wad of pie dough out of the wax paper, you roll it out and put it in the pie pan, and then you tear the wax paper into
like
pieces.
4 pieces.
Nice.
And then I freeze that.
So now you've got your pie dough, and you don't have to roll it out and freeze it. You could do this right now, but ours is already done.
And because I'm going to make so many pies, I want to just be able to get my assembly line going and then be able to move.
So this is
a 9-inch pie, and I take a 1/4 cup of chopped pecans. I think chopped pecans are important to have in your pie because sometimes these big halves are so big you can't hardly cut them.
Well, and it's kind of fun to get little pieces because it's
in
like
every bite.
It's like a filling of chopped nuts.
Yeah.
And then you get the big nuts that float to the top.
It does flavor your pie. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, ideally...
Are these toasted or seasoned nuts?
A lot of recipes will tell you to toast them, but the USDA does not. And what I do is I've got my oven cooking hot enough that it toasts them while they're in there. So you can turn them all over so they're nice and pretty. But it's been my experience that whenever you pour the filling in, they're going to turn over anyway.
Really quickly, I want to show you how she chops the pecans. It's sort of a rough chop. Just rocking the knife back and forth. Are you looking for precise sizes or just smaller than whole?
Yeah, you can get the pieces, but I bought these in bulk at our local box store. And so I just didn't buy, I didn't find, if they had pieces, I didn't see it, but I want pieces for those pies. So I like to, you know, take some of them and do a rough chop on them.
Yep.
Time for me to check the oven.
So there you go.
And
chopped nuts.
I like to put them in a plate, like so. And I can use my knife as a scooper. And then I like to fold my plate in half. And I stuff my plate in the Ziploc bag so I can use it like a cheap funnel. So then I just rub it around and listen to see if it still sounds gritty. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't sound gritty, then I know I've got it all mixed up.
Yep.
Now we're going to pour it in there. I don't like to pour out of this great big bowl, but that's what I like to make it in, is in that great big bowl. And then I'll put it in this just because it is kind of easy.
Now you don't measure.
No.
You pour it until it gets almost to the top, and you try to cover every nut, right?
And I will actually cheat and use a fork
and poke them
to
down
make sure
in there.
and I'll show you how to do that because you don't want to pierce your pie crust, and I'll show you why you don't want to pierce your pie crust in a few minutes. But if you take a fork and you just gently pat these, and so if some of them did turn over and you really want to have, you're going to a party and you really want your pie to look beautiful, you can take your fork. Don't be in a hurry and don't poke this way. You want to just gently pat, but you can lift those and you can turn them over. But my dad used to call this the candy. And he would always tell me, you want to make sure you've got some candy on every one of your pecans. And I like to get it at least to here, but maybe just a little bit more than even that.
So really close to the top, because they puff up, but they don't
boil over. This will not boil over like a fruit pie. Fruit pies, you do not want to overfill them.
But this is different.
Yeah. So it will puff up, but it won't boil over. We've already started one oven full, and you can see how they're wobbly. And remember us talking about the wobble on the pumpkin pies? This is very similar. And you can tell that's really sloshy. Mm-hmm. This is even more sloshy. So the top ones will, of course, finish first, and then the bottom ones will finish last.
Is that true for every oven?
Not necessarily every oven, but that's one of the reasons why we have the convection oven, is because I like that fan moving that air around in there, because they will be done closer. Otherwise, when you overload your oven, which I have, when you overload your oven, things are not going to bake evenly in a regular oven. They just won't. It can't, because of the way
there's too much stuff in there.
The way the heating element. But I'm going to want to bake several pies to give away to neighbors and to family and to co-workers. Mm-hmm. So I want to try to get this assembly line going and get these pies done. I've got cooling racks set up over here, and they're empty now, but we'll show you what they look like after we get some pies on them.
Mm-hmm. Yogi's outside going to sing us a song.
Sing us a song.
And here we've got some cranberries and a cinnamon stick and some spices and some water, and I added an orange yesterday. Looks like Mom's added a lemon and a lime. This has been going since
it smells
yesterday.
So good.
It's like fresh potpourri, but gosh, it smells so good.
And it was really inexpensive.
Well, I was gonna use the cranberries for a cranberry sauce, and they're not good cranberries, so I thought let's try to make the house smell yummy with them.
Oh, and it does smell yummy.
So that's working. So now what's next for your pie? Does it go into the oven?
It'll go in the oven, but it has to wait.
Well, it has to wait its turn, but that's where we're at in the process.
Now that I've made a small batch, I'm going to make a much bigger batch because I'm going to make 8 more pies to go in there as soon as these 9 come out. Because I got 1, and the oven will hold 9 pies, and so I will want to make
a great big batch of candy, so you can make a great big bunch of pies.
Yep.
Okay.
Now over here, do you want to? I'm making a little bread. I'm letting it rest.
Yep, so this is bread dough. And we do have a recipe video for cinnamon rolls that went up on the channel last Vlogmas.
Yeah.
It's in the same baking playlist as this video, so it should be pretty easy for you to find. I will also link it in the description box, and maybe if I can figure out how the eye works, I'll put it in the eye in the sky, as they say. But the house smells yummy. Between this and all of those in there, we've got a really yummy smelling house.
It's gonna be great.
It's the holidays, everybody. Several hours later, and she's made a bunch of pies, and we're not going to talk about those. Ooh, our oven is going to sing to us.
Yeah.
Now she's going to show us what they look like when they're nearly done, right?
So, yeah, watch for the heat to come out. Now you can see that's way too much wobble in there.
Too runny.
Yeah, it's not ready yet.
But see how they're puffing up? They're kind of becoming tall a little bit. That's what you're looking for.
And you can hear that and smell those toasting inside of there.
Yep. So we'll show you what they look like when they're a little closer to being done. Close, but not yet.
Nope. Close.
She wants to help.
Yeah.
We've got help. We're going to check the pies one more time.
Come on, honey, it's hot. Come over here.
Don't stand in the kitchen, please.
There we go.
Thanks. Oh, you took a couple
I
out.
took a couple out.
Okay.
Okay, this is close, very close. You see that?
Sort of a tight wobble. Yep.
But you see how it's raised up?
Yep, puffy on the sides.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't creep over the crust. Mm-hmm. So it just needs a couple more minutes.
And these are the ones that she just took out. So they're puffy. When she took them out of the oven, they were puffy and kind of standing up.
Coming out.
And then as they cool down, they kind of sag down again. That's normal. They should be flat like this when they cool. They may not look like that when they come out of the oven, and that's okay.
All right.
It's ready?
It is ready. There's just a little jiggle in there, and that's because it's molten lava.
Right. Now these in here are not ready
Not
yet.
ready. And I kind of like it that it's done in tiers, because if they all were done at the same time, it would be really hard to get them out of there.
See how it's puffy?
It's puffed up quite a bit.
And it's gonna go down as the steam escapes.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of heat coming off of that.
Don't touch this
And
right now.
it will continue to cook inside. Mm-hmm. And that's why when you've got a custard pie, whether it's this kind of a candied pie with eggs in it, or your pumpkin pie, or a classic custard pie, you want to take it out when it does have that little wobble in there. If you overcook it until it's completely done, it'll crack on you.
So show us how you take it out.
I like to take a knife and come in at an angle, okay? So I'm just skirting along the edge just to make sure it's loose all the way around.
Did you put any flour in there under the...
Yeah, I usually do. I usually dust with flour.
Then under the crust.
Okay. Then I turn the whole thing over on my hand out like that. And then I'll flip it like this.
Wow.
Now, it's really soft.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have your hand like that, you're
flat like a paddle, because you don't want to use your
hand right through it.
Fingers.
But I like to run my knife through there. And then I quickly flip it over.
Mm-hmm. You got to be brave and flip it over quick. Don't be, you know, afraid.
Yeah. Be bold.
Be bold.
Be bold. Let's see if this one's cool enough. Yeah, this one's cool enough. And some of them you can just tell it's not.
It's not going to come out of there?
Or no, you can tell it's not stuck.
What do you do if it is stuck? Like
I
glue?
haven't had any stuck, like even that one that I thought was really stuck.
Mm-hmm.
That was really soft in the bottom.
That one is really soft.
But if you, like this one, and you can see right here it was really short.
Yeah,
okay.
the crust.
The crust was really short, so it kind of spilled. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I got it out of the oven, within 10 minutes, so not like immediately, but within 10 minutes, I took a sharp knife. And again, you know, you could start like this, but you don't want to go around the pie this way. I like to, you know, put that bevel down, and I like to come around the pie, and you're pushing against the pan, not against the pie. And then you can cut that candy, like right there.
Yep.
It just pops loose.
If the pie is cool enough, right?
Yeah. Now, if you wait till it's too cold, or
it's glue.
It's glued in there, and
you will never be able to get it out.
The only thing you need is your fork, like so. Now, after they've cooled, this is probably one of the cooler ones here. Yeah, this one's cool, and you can see. I mean, it's still soft there, but you can still see it's still soft, but.
And you can put this on a paper plate to give it to somebody. You could leave it in the pie pan if you don't want to recycle your pie pans, but we wash these and we reuse them. They moved here from Missouri, but she likes to wrap these in plastic wrap, and we'll show that, and then we save them, stack them in the freezer.
They have to completely cool.
Because you don't want them to sweat.
Cool. You want it to sweat inside of there. And these, you know, like this one's, they're cooling, but you can still feel there's some warmth in them, and I want them cooler than that. That's one of the things I like about the granite, is it will really help drop the temperature on them. Now these pies, somebody may have noticed that these pies have no flour in this recipe.
And the candy.
Yeah, I don't particularly care for the flour to be put in there. Flour, of course, is the grain, the wheat. It is used as a thickening agent. But I think if you've got your egg and your sugar proportions correct, and different sugars, not the same kind of sugars, then I think you're not going to need the flour in it, and it doesn't have that mealy texture to it. Your candy filling is creamier and is more beautiful.
Okay.
So this is one of the pies I just got out of the oven, and I wanted to show you. You can tell right here there's a little bit of the candy that spilled. So I'm going to put my knife in here. Now this pie is really hot. I'm just holding on to the very edge of that rim, but that's really scalding hot.
Hot sugar.
But you just work your way around. Oops. And push as much as you can against the pie plate. And then you've broken that seal between the candy and the pie pan.
Do you let it continue to cool in the pan?
Absolutely. Because
So
if you took it out of this, it'd be soup.
So you just take the knife around.
Yep.
To unseal that sugar right there.
Where is it?
Over here.
Oh.
Right there.
Oh yeah. And then once you've broke that seal, then you let it continue to cool, because this is like hot molten lava. There's no way you could turn that over. And it would, burn everything. I have accidentally once dropped a pie, taking it from the oven to the counter. You know, I mean, they're hot and you're trying to hurry and you got the door open and you don't want.
There's a lot going on.
And so you've got it with your big oven mitts on, and I just sloshed the pie and it just came out of there like
Liquid.
hot molten lava. And it went on the floor, and of course we had to keep the pets away from it because they're like, oh, that smells like butter. I can smell butter. And it's blistering hot.
She has begun the wrapping process. There's still a bunch to do, so it's not like we've missed anything. But she's got her plastic wrap food service film from the big box store. And that's one layer. This is 2.
And I like to turn it at 90 degrees.
And the pies are completely cool now, right?
Yep. And you freeze these after they've completely cooled and they're wrapped.
Can you stack them on top of each other?
I like to stack them just 1 or 2
until they're
layers,
frozen.
Until they're frozen, and then you can really stack them.
Okay.
And you know, keep them frozen up to a few months, and they'll keep.
If they last that long.
If they last that long. So defrost it at refrigerator temperature.
So once it's frozen, then you can set it in the refrigerator until it's thawed. On a pie plate or on a like a regular plate is fine.
Yeah. And take the plastic wrap off so it doesn't sweat underneath it there. And get
so when
moist.
you defrost it naked.
I defrost it naked, and then I'll put it in the oven just for a few minutes. You know, let it defrost, bring it out, let it get to room temperature, and then I'll just put it in the oven to toast those pecans on the top again.
Okay.
Now you can just get it right out of the freezer, set it out, let it defrost.
We've done that before.
Many times.
And it's still really good.
It's still good, but if you really want it to be just like it was just right out of the oven, that's what you have to do.
So now you know how to make my mom's pecan pie recipe. She is continuing to work on wrapping them all. I'm going to put the camera down and help her so that she can sit down and we can watch a Christmas movie. But that is going to be it for this pecan pie recipe video. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in a comment and we'll get to them. Do you have any last words, Mom?
It's really
have fun.
An easy pie to bake, and don't make it hard. It's not hard. Just bake the pie, and if you're struggling with the pie dough, it's too close to the holidays to even mess with it, just go get one of the ones out of the freezer section or out of the refrigerator section at the store, and then you can work on pie dough all next year and feed the chickens. But this is an easy pie that you should be able to do.
Yeah.
And impress your family.
Vlogging this has made me realize just how simple this recipe really is. It is pretty simple. You just have to make sure that you're, you know, looking for the right things and you have a good recipe. This is a good recipe. But anyway, that's gonna be it. You guys will see us in another vlog really, really soon. Goodbye. Hello. We're in the kitchen today because somebody is going to be sharing a pecan pie. That is a great big ream of toilet paper over there. You don't need to see that. Let's start over.